future researchers! Kumusta kayo? Welcome back to our YouTube channel. This is me again, Teacher Ting May, ang gagabay sa inyong research journey. At para sa mga bago pa lang sa channel na ito, don't forget to subscribe, like, and hit the notification bell para ma-notify kayo sa ating mga new lesson vlogs about research. In this lesson, you should be able to recognize international standard and rules in the conduct of research. Last time, we discussed about the rules in human participant. In this video, we will discuss about the rules in vertebrate animals. How do we define vertebrate animals? Do you have any idea? Vertebrate animals are those animals that have backbone. Rats are commonly the animals that are used in the experiment. Just like human, vertebrates have feelings also, and health and well-being is of high priority when student researchers conduct research with animal subjects. There are rules that were developed to help student researchers observe to the federal regulations governing professional scientists and to protect the welfare of both animal subjects and the student researcher. The society strongly endorses the use of non-animal research methods and encourages students to use alternatives to animal research, which must be explored and discussed in the research plan. When you were in grade 7, we already discussed the 4 guiding principles for the use of animals in research, which includes the 4 R's. Can you still remember that? The guiding principles for the use of animals in research include the following 4 R's. What are those? Number 1, we have replace. And when we say replace, it means to replace vertebrate animals with invertebrates, lower life forms, tissue cell cultures, and or computer simulations where possible. So when we say replace, okay, we're going to use invertebrate animals rather than the vertebrate animals because we are being discouraged to use vertebrate animals. So instead of using rats, fishes, we can use invertebrate animals like worms and others. Okay, next, we have reduce. So what do you mean by reduce? When we say reduce, we're going to reduce the number of animals without compromising statistical validity. So instead of using animals, so let us make it less. And of course, we are still considering the statistical validity of the research problem that you are making. Okay, again, we have replace, reduce. The other one is what we call refine. And when we say refine, the experimental protocol, refining the experimental protocol to minimize pain or distress to the animals. Because in doing research wherein you are using the vertebrate animals, we are discouraging that there are distress and pain that will cause to the animals because we are still prioritizing the health and well-being of the vertebrates animals because vertebrates animals are just like human. They also have feelings and they also have life. So the reason why we are refining the experimental protocol. So you have to study what are those experimental protocol that can cause pain and distress to these animals. And the last one, we have respect. Okay, just like how you respect human, there should also be respect in the animals. So respect animals and their contribution to research. So again, what are those 4 guiding principles? We have replace, reduce, refine, and respect. Again, replace is to replace vertebrate animals with invertebrates animals. Reduce is to lessen the number of animals that are being used in research. Refine, we are talking about the experimental protocol and procedure. And respect, we should respect the contribution and the feelings of animals. If the use of vertebrate animals is necessary, students must consider additional alternatives to reduce and refine the use of animals. All projects involving vertebrate animals must adhere to the rules for all vertebrate animal studies and to either Section A or Section B rules, depending on the nature of the study and the research site. A project is considered a tissue study and not a vertebrate animal study if tissue is obtained from animal that was euthanized for a purpose other than the student's projects. Use of tissues obtained from research conducted at a regulated research institution requires a copy of an IACUC certification with the name of the research institution, the title of the study, the IACUC approval number, and the date of ICUC approval. So what do you mean by euthanize? When we say euthanize, it is the act of putting an animal to death. In tissue studies, a student may observe the vertebrate study but may not manipulate or have any direct involvement in the vertebrate animal experiences or animal experimental procedures. Vertebrate animals as covered by these rules are defined as, so what are those animals that are considered as vertebrate animals? Vertebrate animals are covered by these rules and defined as live or non-human vertebrate mammalian embryos or fetuses. So these are also examples of vertebrate animals. What else? The tadpoles, they are also considered as vertebrate animals. Or bird and reptile eggs starting 3 days or 72 hours prior to hatching. All other non-human vertebrate animals including fish at hatching or birth. Exception, because of their delayed cognitive neutral development, zebrafish embryos may be used up to 7 days or 168 hours or 168 hours post-fertilization. Now, let us proceed with the rules of all vertebrate animal studies. Okay, number 1, all vertebrate animal studies must have a research plan that includes the following. First, justification why animals must be used, including the reasons for the choice of species, the source of animals, and the number of animals to be used. You also include the description, explanation, and identification of alternatives to animal use that were considered and the reasons these alternatives were unacceptable, and also include the explanation of the potential impact or contribution this research may have on the broad fields of biology or medicine. So it's really important that you include all the things that are related and all about the animals. Next, you also include the description of how animals will be used. You include the methods and procedure, experimental design, the data analysis, the description of the procedures, and of course, the procedures that will minimize the potential of discomfort, distress, pain, and injury to the animals during the course of experimentations. Okay, the next thing that you have to consider is to identify the species, the strain, sex, age, weight, source, and animal, and number of animals proposed to use. Of course, all vertebrate animal studies must be reviewed and approved before experimentation begins. An institutional animal care and use of committee, it is also known as the IACUC, and other agency. Okay, this IACUC is the Institutional Animal Oversight Review and approval body for all the animal studies at a regulated research institution. So always remember that when you are dealing with animals, with vertebrate animals, it will always be reviewed and should be approved by the agency and by the review committee. Because without their approval, you cannot proceed with your science investigatory project. Okay, next, let us proceed to rule number 3. Students who are performing vertebrate animal research must satisfy the U.S. federal law, as well as the local, state, and country laws and regulations of the jurisdiction in which research is performed. So, everything should be approved by the higher agency and review committee. Next, research projects which cause more than momentary or slight pain or distress are prohibited. The reason why we are going to measure the weight of the animals before and after the experimentation, and if ever that you monitor your animal and have gained unexpected weight loss, the study will be disqualified and you must stop your experimentation. Next, no vertebrate animal deaths due to the experimental procedures are permitted in any group or subgroup. Always remember that our highest priority is the health and well-being of animals, and death of animals is not really acceptable in any kind of research activity or research experimentation. Next, okay, studies that are designed or anticipated to cause vertebrate animal death are prohibited. Okay, just like what we have said a while ago. Next, any death that occurs must be investigated by a veterinarian or the qualified scientist. And of course, if there is death, they will determine what is the cause of death. If it was incidental or it's just due to experimental procedures. And if they find out that it is due to experimental procedure, your experiment or your science investigatory project will be terminated. Ayan. If that was result of the experimental procedure, study will be terminated and you will not be qualified to any competition. Number 6, all animals must be monitored for signs of distress. Yeah, this is what I am telling you a while ago, that the weight of animals must be recorded before and after the experimentation. And if after the experimentation, the animals have lost 15% of the maximum permissible loss or growth retardation, your study will be terminated. And number 7, students are prohibited from designing or participating in an experiment associated with the following types of studies on vertebrate animals. So what are those? Induce toxicity studies with known toxic substances that could cause pain, distress, or death. Next, behavioral experiments using conditioning with aversive stimuli. Or for example, you separate the mother and infant. Okay, it will also cause distress to animals. Studies of pain and predator vertebrate prey experiments. Number 8, justification is required for an experimental design that involves food or fluid restriction and must be appropriate to the species. Number 9, animals may not be captured from or released into the wild without approval or authorized wildlife or other regulatory officials. Why? Because all appropriate methods and precautions must be used to decrease the stress. So, for example, fish may be obtained from wild only if the researcher releases the fish unharmed, has the proper license, and adheres to state, local, and national fishing laws and regulations. Always remember that the use of electrofishing is permissible only if conducted by a trained supervisor. Remember also that students are prohibited from performing electrofishing. The reason why you need to have your QS or the qualified scientist or designated supervisor. Next, number 10. A qualified scientist or designated supervisor must directly supervise all the research involving vertebrate animals. Of course, except for observational studies. But if there are something that you have to apply or inject, or you need to do something with vertebrate animals, you cannot perform and you cannot administer anything with the vertebrate animals. Number 11, after initial SRC approval, a student with any proposed changes in the research plan, project summary of the project must repeat the approval process before laboratory experimentation and data procedures. So again, if there are any changes in your procedure, so for example, tapos nang ma-approve ng SRC or ng any review committee, and then suddenly there are changes in your procedure, you must repeat again the approval process. Because any changes in your activity, any changes in your experiment, it should be known by the SRC and review committee. Now, let us proceed with exempt studies. So these are the studies that do not require the SRC pre-approval, meaning to say you can proceed with your activity, with your research experimentation without waiting for the approval of the SRC before the experimentation. So it includes the studies involving behavioral observations of animals. They are exempted in SRC, prior to SRC. Okay, number 1, there is no interaction with the animals being observed. Okay, sabihin malayo, or you are not dealing with animals. So you're just observing and there are no interaction between you and the vertebrate animals. Next, there is no manipulation of the animal environment. Okay, you did not change the environment, the habitat of the animal. So it is also included in exemption or exempt studies. Next, okay, of course, all the studies should meet the federal and state agriculture, fish, game, and wildlife laws and regulations. Now, let us proceed with additional rules for project conducted at home, school, and field. Vertebrate animal studies may be conducted at home, school, farm, ranch, in the field, etc. And this includes the following. So number 1, studies of animals in their natural environment. It can also be studies of animals in zoological parks. Studies of livestock that use standard agricultural practices, and studies of fish that use standard aquaculture practices. This project must be reviewed and approved by the SRC, in which one member is either a veterinarian or an animal care provider expert with training and or experience in the species being studied. Always remember that these projects must adhere to both of the following guidelines. Number 1, the research involves only agricultural, behavioral, observational, or supplemental nutritional studies on animals. Or the research involves only non-invasive or non-intrusive methods that do not negatively affect an animal's health or well-being. So when we say non-invasive and non-intrusive, it is not very dangerous and harmful to the animals. Number 2, animals must be treated kindly and cared for properly. Next, number 3, the local or affiliated fair scientific review committee must determine if a veterinarian certification of the research and the animal husbandry plan is required. So it is always affiliated with the review committee. Number 4, if an illness or emergency occurs, the affected animal must receive proper medical or nursing care that is directed by a veterinarian. Again, it should not be administered by the student researcher, but of course, it should be administered by the qualified scientist. Number 5, The final disposition of the animals must be conducted in a responsible and ethical manner. And of course, vertebrate animals, you should accomplish Vertebrate Animal Form 5A. Number 6. Euthanasia for tissue removal and or pathological analysis is not permitted for a project conducted in a home, school, or field site. Okay? So, kailangan ito ay under the supervision of the qualified scientist and must be administered only in selected. And lastly, livestock or fish raised for food using standard agricultural or aquacultural production practices may be euthanized by a qualified adult for carcass evaluation. Because when you are dealing with euthanized tissue or euthanized animals, it should undergo investigation also. Always remember that when we say animal euthanasia, it is the act of putting an animal to death or allowing it to die by withholding extreme medical measures. And what are only the reasons why we undergo euthanasia in animals? There are reasons why animals are being euthanized. For example, it has incurable diseases and it's very dangerous to other living organism. So it will undergo the process of euthanasia. Or for example, one of the reasons also is lack of resources to continue supporting the animal or laboratory test procedures. Okay. We do euthanasia because these are assigned to cause minimal pain or distress. But if you're going to use the tissue or the cell of the animals, make sure that it is euthanized by a reason or other reason, but you did not euthanize an animal just for the sake of research, because it is prohibited and it is against the protocol of vertebrate animals rules.
Okay, that's all for today. Thank you for watching. Sana ay may natutunan kayo. For our next lesson vlog, we're going to discuss about the rules for potentially hazardous biological agents. Okay, stay tuned on our YouTube channel. This is me again, Teacher May, ang kasama nyo sa inyong research journey. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and hit the notification bell for more updates and lesson vlog in research. See you on my next vlog. Bye!